Hi, and welcome to Answers News for October the 21st, 2019. I'm Avery Foley. I'm here with Dr. Georgia Purdom, and Roger Patterson's back with us.
Back again.
And we have a wonderful live studio audience. If you guys want to clap and say hi, make yourselves known. We've even got some Canadians in the audience today, which is great. I always love that.
It's always a good day.
My fellow countrymen.
Exciting to see everybody. I love this time of year, especially, because people say, when is your slow season? And I'm like, because there's always a lot, seems like there's always a lot of people here.
It's
so that's
true.
fun. So we have some events coming up, just to make you aware at the Answer Center down at the Ark Encounter. November 1st and 2nd, we'll have our annual Creation College Expo. So this is an opportunity for high school students to come and look at different colleges. And these are colleges that have signed the Answers in Genesis tenets of creation, basically. So they agree with us, and this is what they teach at their institution. And so I know I'm going to be there with my daughter because she's in high school now, so she'll be looking around at the different colleges, and I'll be speaking as well at the expo. So we have special speakers on each day, and there's a concert, and so you can go online to register. It really is a great opportunity because everybody's together in one room, so you're not having to necessarily travel to all these places, at least initially, and kind of check them out. So
it's free.
And it's free,
which is awesome.
You can't beat that. So it's a really good opportunity to find a lot of like-minded institution. And then this week is also the UK Creation Mega Conference, and Ken Ham and myself will be traveling to the UK tomorrow to go to that. So I'm super excited about it because I've never been across the pond. I've been to Ireland, but I haven't been to the UK. So anyway, so we'll be speaking there, and so just be in prayer for that event. We do this every other year as far as the Mega Conference goes, and while these conferences are kind of common here in the U.S., they're not very common in the U.K. So it's really a chance to equip and educate the church there. And Ken and I will also be speaking in Oxford at the very end, a week from today, actually. We'll be speaking in Oxford at the theater there. So just be in prayer for that, because it's about obviously a very academic community and one that probably isn't in agreement with us on most things. So it's an opportunity to really share the gospel and share the truth with these individuals. So just pray that that goes well. And Roger will be in the UK next year.
Yeah, next year the conference will be focused on world religions. So with our World Religions and Cults book series and other pieces, I'll get to go over there and kick off the conference with speaking on the general idea, and then talk about Mormonism some. And we've got others like Dr. James White coming to speak on Islam and some other topics. Dr. Alan White will be there as well speaking. So lots of great speakers coming. And this is great because one of the other major Christian conferences they have there in the UK really focuses on bringing in progressive creationists and theistic evolutionists to support the Christian view, rather than giving the young earth biblical creation view from that perspective. So it's a great opportunity for the church to hear these teachings.
Right, yeah, so super excited about that. So if you're in the UK, and I know we have lots of UK listeners, so please come to the conference, and you can find out more information online. So we have lots of people getting online. I'm on YouTube, and then they're on Answers in Genesis and Ken Ham, or vice versa there. So we are watching from all over the place. So that's good. Oh, yep, there's someone from England right there.
Northern Ireland, so some UK people on there.
All right. So we'll start with just some fluffier stuff at the beginking. We wanted to talk about this. This is kind of cool. Kenya's, and let's see if we can get this.
Just try it.
Eliud Kipchoge.
Sure, that works for me.
Kipchoge.
I'm going with
We'll go with that. Becomes first person to shatter 2-hour marathon barrier. So this is a runner who just broke what they thought couldn't be broken, the 2-hour marathon barrier, by running the marathon in 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 40.2 seconds.
It counts, right? 20 seconds shy. And I was kind of interested in this because, people would say, now they didn't in this article, but people say, oh, humans are evolving, right? Well, we're not evolving. I mean, we might be becoming faster, but we're not evolving. We're not becoming something else, so to speak. We're just becoming maybe faster and faster human. I was interested because they used to think you couldn't break the 4-minute mile, right? That was the barrier, so to speak. And Roger Bannister back in the 50s broke the 4-minute mile. Now that's the expected, that you would run the mile in under a minute, right? So it just shows that more and more how we're able to do these things.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. He was pretty excited about it, obviously. He held the world record before, and now,
Right.
even though this one isn't official,
Yeah.
so he still holds the world record. But it was neat to see, and just some of the science that went into it too. Like they had laser pointers on the road ahead of him, showing him the best spot to run to like help him run it faster. And they had like cyclists who would pedal beside him and give him water so he wouldn't have to stop to get a drink. Like it's a whole team effort to get him across the finish line in the record time, and a lot of science that goes into it too, which was really cool.
I'm happy for him because
Yeah.
I'd be dead. Like I would.
Oh my word!
I don't know that I could run 2 miles in 2 hours. So.
I think I would not walk for months with my bad knees after that. But anyway.
Yeah, that wouldn't go well. All right, this next one, and this is again another one of those when you think you've read every headline you could possibly read, then you read this one. SpongeBob is a violent racist colonizer, says University of Washington professor.
Well, duh.
I have never really watched much SpongeBob, but I mean, that's the vibe I get from the pictures, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, a sponge
look
dressed
at him.
in a suit. I mean, you know. When I saw this, I was like, now even SpongeBob's getting political, you know? I mean, nobody's exempt, right, from this. And so it just amazes me, though, how they can make so much out of absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, it's a bunch to do about nothing.
And this was published in an academic journal.
Yeah.
So just let that sink in for a moment.
Yeah.
And it's become popular to take everything that we see and try to turn it into some social or political agenda.
Yeah.
And we have this whole mindset of critical theory there's the oppressed class and the oppressors, which really has a lot of a basis in Marxism. But to import all of these things into things that are meant for fun, entertainment, is just going to corrupt everything. And no one will ever be able to say anything without being a racist or a sexist or a whatever is you are. And it's just going crazy. But this is what
madness.
we see as we start to drift away from any type of absolute standard, any type of biblical authority, where God can guide our morality and help us understand these
Well, the
things.
article title was Unsettling SpongeBob and the Legacies of Violence on Bikini Bottom.
It's a fictional place.
Yes,
That's
it
where
is,
he
but they
lives, under the
say,
ocean.
though,
Yeah.
supposedly, that it really has to do with the Bikini Atoll that's in the Marshall Islands, which during the Cold War, natives of the area were relocated and the American military used the zone for nuclear testing. So these creatures are actually the result of mutations from that testing.
But
Yeah.
that's just a fan theory.
It's just,
about
they say in here, it's a fan theory. It's like,
it's
Yeah.
just silly.
Yeah.
All right, let's not
Yeah.
waste any more breath.
Yeah, I just keep thinking it's a sponge, people, that talks. Just move on, okay? It's nothing more than that. Somebody on here said, in reference to the previous article, supposedly millions of years and we've only evolved to 20 seconds faster with the marathon. So yeah, we're not evolving in that, just in not in that
Here's a
sense.
comment for Bodie from
no.
Alan. More holes in their line of reasoning than a sponge. So,
Oh, so when Bodie's on here, he's our pun master.
Yeah.
If you watch
people
it,
fill in for him.
He's
so
a-
Alan has filled in for Bodie today.
Oh,
All right,
here's another
so-
one. Academia has sunk to an ocean bottom low. So, yeah. Oh, gosh.
So those were our fun items. Now we'll move into the real
News. There we go.
Why humans' extinct Hobbit relatives were so small. So most people are probably familiar with the so-called Hobbits, a supposed human species that they found on the island of Flores in Indonesia. So this article is talking about these people were very, very short, very small people. And so this article is talking about why were they
Not
so
like
short?
you, though.
Shorter than me.
Shorter than Avery.
Thank you, Roger. We have our chairs set,
Compared
so it
to
doesn't
Roger,
look like there's as
everyone's
much of a
short,
height
so.
disparity, but it's pretty bad. So this article is talking about why they were so small and talking about the what's called the island rule, which is basically that larger creatures tend to get smaller on islands and smaller creatures tend to get larger on islands.
Yeah, with
and they're saying
limited
maybe that's why that
resources
happened.
based on an island, larger animals the smaller ones in a population are gonna tend to survive better.
Right,
And
'cause
so
there's no
for
predators.
large mammals, where there are no predators on these islands and limited resources, we see that effect.
With pygmy elephants and
pygmy
hippos and
elephants
things like
and
that.
hippos are things, those are kind of the standard references that we think about, yeah.
Because when they first found what they named the Hobbit, when they first found it, they said, well, maybe it was like a human that had some sort of nutritional deficiency, or maybe
microcephaly or something.
Yeah, something was not quite right. But then they found other examples, and so they began to say, well, we don't think that's really the case. We just think it was some line of humans that was really small for whatever reason. And so what they've kind of done, the reason that this made the headlines now is because they've sort of dated these humans to say that they lived, one of the fossils lived between 60 and 90,000 years ago, and the other one lived about 700,000 years ago. So it shows the longevity, so to speak, of what they call this particular species of humans. Now, obviously the dating is really wrong and really off, okay, because the world is only 6,000 years old, so that can't be right. And we would definitely not refer to this as another species of human. It's just another variety within humans, just like Neanderthals or anything else like that.
And placing them right after the Ice Age seems reasonable, even from our biblical perspective, because as humans were spreading out over the world after Babel, and the Ice Age was a response to the flood, just a natural response to that. We would imagine that people are going to be seeking refuge in places like caves, where they found them here on these Indonesian islands. Those are easy places to live. You don't have to go build a shelter. And then as people, the populations grew in different areas, we would have seen development of farming and housing and all of those types of things they would have had. But yeah, it's not a new human, okay? Even though they would call it Homo floresiensis, we would still understand it to be a part of Homo sapiens, just a smaller variety of humans who lived in this area.
And they talk about, one of the things they did was to figure out how this could happen. So how could you go from like the what they call the Homo sapien size to the Homo floresi size? How could you have a human that's so small? So they did a computer model, which we all know is extremely accurate. But they put a lot of assumptions into that, lots of different because how do you know all these variables, right?
Right.
But they put a lot in, and they talk about how could you evolve this new species. Well, first of all, you don't evolve a new species. It's not evolving, it's just speciation, right? We can't mix those two terms up, because evolution is changing from one kind of organism into a completely different kind of organism. Speciation is just variety within that kind, okay? Like we have different species of dogs and different species of cats and things like that. But one of the things that surprised them was, in all their computer models, is how fast you could actually get completely different varieties within the humankind. Okay.
They wouldn't expect that from the evolutionary.
Right, yeah, because they were like it's slow and gradual.
Again, the two different worldviews. When we start our thinking from an evolutionary worldview, we're going to read the data and interpret the data in one way. When we start from a biblical perspective, we're going to do it the other way. And so we have we would certainly collapse these time spans, but we can agree about much of what happened here. And the genetic things that are happening, we might not have a lot of details because we don't have DNA samples to analyze and those types of things. But the basic concept there is pretty straightforward, and we would have no problem with the science of interpreting how they got there and all of those pieces and their body size. It's just the time span, and certainly putting them in with humans. They were humans.
And the brain size, even though it's small, is proportional to the individual. I mean, it's not like it's way smaller or something than we would expect for that size of a human being. So it doesn't seem to indicate, in other words, some sort of cephalic condition where the brain is really small or something like that. So it's just a small human, just like Neanderthals were very large humans, kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. So yeah, fits within, it's explained nicely by the biblical worldview.
All right, this next one. Cosmic mudball meteorite smells like Brussels sprouts, finds new home at museum. So this is about a meteorite that fell in Costa Rica and is now found a new home at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. And apparently, if you smell it, it smells like cooked Brussels sprouts.
I'm all for that. I love Brussels sprouts, okay? I know I may be weird, but I really like them. And we like the ones at
Zara's buffet at the Ark. They're so good. Oh, every time I go to the Ark and I have the buffet, I just basically eat Brussels sprouts because they're so good.
You guys can have my portion on the drive.
They're so
They
good.
are awesome, though. They really are. So if you go to Zara's at the Ark, which you have to do, you have to try the Brussels sprouts, okay?
Yeah,
Just saying.
absolutely
So
have to.
They're amazing.
It's
But
not optional. But this
Anyway,
smells like
back to
them.
the meteorite.
Probably doesn't taste like Brussels sprouts. Smells like Brussels sprouts because of organic compounds such as amino acids, which they say is important. They're going to study this because it might have seeded the building blocks of life on Earth. A meteorite like this one might have crashed into Earth billions of years ago, bringing those amino acids with it, and therefore you get eventually life.
Yeah, so again, they're basing this on the nebular hypothesis of the evolution of our solar system and the sun and everything there. So if you think about evolution, don't limit it to just biological evolution. Here's an example of cosmic and geological evolution happening. And so they would say this meteorite formed at the same time as the rest of our solar system, and this material was there, or it could have come from another solar system and transferred in, and it's carrying these amino acids in it. Now, one of the problems with developing an atheistic or naturalistic explanation for life on Earth is you have to get all these components of life together in the right place at the right time in the right conditions to form the original first cell or the first living thing. And so, yeah, this is the potential source of those amino acids, a meteorite like this that would have struck Earth billions of years ago. But there are a lot of chemical barriers to those things, and there are a lot of biological barriers to those things.
Yeah, you're a geneticist. Is all that it takes to make life is amino acids?
No, you have to know how to organize those amino acids in the correct sequence in order to make a protein that's functional and does something. And then where does the information on how to put the protein together come from? You have
If
to
the
have
protein was already there in the first place, how do you get a blueprint to make the
right,
protein?
which would be like DNA, which does code the information for the protein. So it's always
You need information, which
Yeah,
you're not
you
going to
need
get from a
information. You
meteorite.
need a lot more
that
than just
smells
a
like
bunch of
Brussels
them.
sprout.
Then there's the
Amino
chirality
acids.
problem. You've got left-handed and right-handed amino acids,
Right.
and all of those issues come into play. So while this sounds like, oh, here's another piece of evidence to support this idea, it really just gives us another example of how they're, again, interpreting that evidence to fit their
Yeah.
storyline.
What I thought was interesting towards the end of this,
Yes.
sometimes, okay, so it's interesting enough that it smells like Brussels sprouts, right? But then they say that geologists actually learn to lick their rocks.
I didn't know that about geologists.
I asked Dr. Gabriella Haynes, who's our paleontologist, about that, because I was like, really? And she's like, yes. So geologists lick their rocks. And I'm like, this is another reason why I am a biologist, because we do not lick animals.
That wouldn't go over so well in the
Microbes.
chemistry lab either. I think I've trained our students not to do that. in
don't
chem
lick
lab.
the chemical.
Yeah,
But you
lick
don't
the
lick meteorites, though. This is
Yeah,
one
don't
rock
lick
they won't
meteorites. Don't do that. Yeah, it's bad to lick them.
Rules
It's
for
bad
life.
to
So
lick
good advice.
meteorites,
If you
so-
ever find a meteorite and your first
Don't lick
inclination
it.
is to lick it, resist the urge. Don't lick the meteorite.
Well, I would say don't lick any rock, unless you're a geologist and you have like a
if you've
legitimate
been,
reason
if you've been
to
trained to lick rocks, go ahead and lick
Just
them, but
saying.
otherwise don't lick the rocks.
Somebody said, now let's slap some bacon on that rock. Brussels sprouts and bacon, yum.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that sounds good.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Someone says here, so that's how life sprouted.
Oh, that's a good one.
Joyce,
I
that
like
was pretty
one.
good.
There we go.
All right. Ending religion is a bad idea, says Richard Dawkins. So not necessarily someone who you would think of as saying that ending religion is bad, since he's an atheist who has worked and written tons of books about how God does not exist and why we need to get rid of God and we need to get rid of religion. But he says it might actually be a bad idea because it would, quote, give people a license to do really bad things.
And this comes out of some work that one of his students did and other things that he's dealt with, where if there was a something out for you to take for that you were supposed to pay for, you wouldn't, and if there was a surveillance camera, you knew somebody was watching, you'd be more likely to pay than. And that's,
People are less likely
yeah.
to shoplift if there's a camera in the corner, things like that.
That's
Yeah.
human nature. We expect that. People are going to try to get away with whatever they can, even if they know it's wrong, because that's the condition of the human heart. If you're not a Christian, if you're not regenerated and have God to change those things. And it really struck me as amazing, because here's a man who espouses a worldview, and he's called the God of the Bible some very terrible names.
Yes. he
And
has.
says that Christians are delusional and we shouldn't, or it's child abuse to train your children to believe in the Bible. But he wants to borrow some of that morality because it makes life better. So if you have a worldview where you have to borrow morality from someone you don't believe exists, maybe your worldview is flawed. That's my conclusion about all of these things.
And they've tried, and he has tried to make the point in the past too, that you can be good without God. I mean, a lot of them try to say, well, you don't need God to be good.
That was one of their ad slogans on buses and billboards.
And the thing is that there are atheists that act really good, that do good things. I'm not arguing that. Here's the thing. You don't have a foundation for, first of all, defining what is good, and secondly, for acting good. I mean, you don't really have, I mean, you're doing it, but you don't have a foundation or a basis
You're
for
borrowing
doing
from
it.
a Christian worldview in order to...
Right. Because what is good? How do you define good in a naturalistic worldview? I mean, you have to have a foundation or a basis to know what is good and what is bad. So, and he's not saying that people should all of a sudden be Christians or people should believe in God. He's just saying it works to help control the masses, basically. It works to help control people's behavior. So maybe it's good that people do believe in that, so we have a better society as a result.
And that really fits into a humanistic philosophy. We do whatever benefits us the most. And so I mentioned the World Religions and Cults books. The third volume of the series deals with a lot of those naturalistic, materialistic, humanistic types of religions. And we've got several videos that go through that. Mark Spence from Living Waters did this one on the bankruptcy of atheism, and he addresses that issue of the morality of the atheists in there. Todd Friel from Wretched did the secular humanism. Going out, he did some interviews on campuses with college kids just to show the relativistic nature of their morality. And so again, without grounding those things in truth, there's no hope. And we know that there is truth, and we even look to Jesus, who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He is the one who is the ultimate expression of that, in God taking on human flesh, who came, and even for Richard Dawkins, he has sinned just like all of us, and there's hope for him if he'll turn to Christ and trust in those things. And then he'll see not the need for morality to be good for goodness sake, but to be good in a way that honors Christ and honors us as image bearers and brings glory to God.
Somebody on here said, Richard Dawkins needs to see God's face. Well, you know what he just needs to believe his word. I mean, he is revealed in the living word, and in the word of God. And so I hope that, because some people say, well, if God came down and, spoke to him directly, I still don't think he'd believe, because he'd say it's just an illusion, it's just a hallucination, it's not real. He has everything he needs to believe, and he chooses not to.
We are without excuse.
So it's not about the evidence, it's just it's a heart problem, it's a heart issue that he's refusing not to. All right.
Another reminder for us to pray for those who are hostile to Christianity, that others would share the message with them, that God would indeed change their hearts.
All right, gene editing successfully used to treat cervical cancer in mice. So this is a piece of good news talking about, we've talked about this technology before, the CRISPR-Cas9 technology that basically is like molecular scissors. They've been using it to treat cervical cancer in mice, and they've been sending in what they called a nanoparticle to search out the cancer-causing gene in the cancer cells, and then edit it by introducing some extra DNA, which causes it to be misread and not replicated and basically kills the cancer. And it's been very successful in these mice, which is really cool.
And it's a really good use for CRISPR. CRISPR can, just like anything in genetics or like a gene editing tool like this, it can be used for bad and it can be used for good. And this is a really good use of it, because the changes that it makes in this individual are not going to be passed down to the next generation. They're just going to stay with that individual. And with cervical cancer, a lot of times, I had a friend die from that, and you don't know you even have it until it's really advanced and in a late stage, and there aren't a lot of treatments available, or they're just not very successful. So this is a great use for this, because this particular cancer is caused by a virus, the human papillomavirus. And so we know what genes it puts into the humans basically to make the cancer. And so we can go in and basically edit those genes, take them out, and cure the cancer. That's amazing, right? That's an amazing.
But that doesn't mean it's a magic bullet automatically for any other cancer, because cancers that are inside the human DNA, they're not a viral insertion. They're layers to those genes, how they work together to cause the cancer, and that gene might still be needed to perform an important function in the body. So if we go in and knock it out, that would cause other problems. But this is a great use of this technology and a way to explore other options for that. And again, it reminds us of the fall and how the world is cursed and suffering under the effects of curse. Here's a way where we can temporarily reverse those effects. But our real hope is not in medicines and gene editing, but that God will restore the creation one day. And that's where we need to really place our hope in those things.
But it's a nice way here on earth to reverse the curse, is what I always say, to be able to do that, which this wasn't even thought of just even 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I think they said at the end of the article they were hoping to do human trials in gene therapy in the next couple of years,
That's good.
Which is really cool.
Yeah,
So
very good.
it's some exciting stuff. All right, this one comes from the Los Angeles Times, an opinion piece. Beto, am I saying that right? Is it
Beto.
Sorry. Beto O'Rourke's church tax idea plays into conservative paranoia about same-sex marriage. So this was very, very popular in the news, I think, last week. So most people are probably familiar with the statements made by Beto O'Rourke saying that if he were to become president of the United States, he's currently running for the Democratic nomination, that he thinks that religious institutions like colleges, churches, nonprofits, they should lose their tax-exempt status if they oppose same-sex marriage. So this opinion piece is commenting on that, and the person writing this opinion piece is very, very upset, not because Mr. O'Rourke made those statements, but because he made them now, and he let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, and is playing into the so-called paranoia of the conservatives who've been saying for years that once you've legalize same-sex marriage like they did in 2015, it's going to attack free speech, it's going to undermine religious freedom, and that's what we've seen happening. And now this writer is saying, he said this, and now they're going to use it as another example, and it's just feeding into their apocalyptic paranoia.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, like in the article, one of the things that Beto O'Rourke said was, well, we have to do this because any organization in America that denies the full human rights and the full civil rights of every single one of us, and he says we need to stop those who are infringing upon the human rights of our fellow Americans. What about my right?
Exactly.
There's no way that this works out that you're not going to infringe on someone's rights. You just don't want to infringe on, you think it's okay to infringe on the Christians' rights, is what it comes down to. It's not about equal rights for everybody. It's about rights for these people and taking away ours.
And they're basically saying it's okay to think whatever you want to think, just don't act on that. You can have your religion at home or in your church service, but don't bring that into the public square.
Right.
Yeah.
But everyone's worldview influences their actions and the way they act on things in the world. And so this is a form of censoring the Christian or the biblical worldview and hiding those things up. But as Christians, even as we face this mounting pressure from social and cultural groups, we have to remember a tax status and tax exemption. That's a social and political benefit that we enjoy, and we think it does good things for the society and in promoting families and religious views and all of those types of things. But we have to be willing to lose those benefits for the sake of purity to the gospel and to God's word. And if that means that those who will deny that same-sex marriage is a real thing, because we understand it's not. Marriage is meant to be between one man and one woman for life. That's God's ordained plan. We have to be willing to lose those things for the sake of the gospel and for the sake of the glory of Christ.
Yeah,
because this is all just temporary. All these ideas people have right now about homosexuality and transgender and all that, it's just temporary. It'll fade away, just like all these other ideas in the past have faded away, but God's word will stand forever, and the gospel will stand forever. It's obviously definitely more important than Christians being socially woke or having a tax exempt status.
And it's not a matter of if this happens, it's a matter of when this happens. This will, I honestly believe this will eventually happen, what he's saying. It may be a while, but it will happen. And so like what Roger is saying is though that this isn't about having tax exempt status. This is about God's word and the truth of God's word and standing on that and still giving and doing those things. We don't do it because we get a tax write-off. I would hope not. If we're doing it for that, we're doing it for the wrong reasons, right?
Yes.
We're doing it because this is the Lord wants us to give and help support ministries and help support organizations that are helping people know His truth. And so we and organizations themselves still need to function even without that.
If you didn't get a tax benefit, are you still willing to give to your church or other? Those are questions that the Christians are going to have to face, and they're going to reveal our hearts in these matters.
Right.
For sure, for sure. All right, this next one. I'm convinced we found evidence of life on Mars in the 1970s. So this is another like opinion type piece, writing about the Viking mission back in the 1970s to Mars, and this individual is saying, yeah, they found evidence of life.
Well, they were involved in it.
They
so
were,
this person was actually involved in that
In the
particular
research of the
project.
Viking
He's a
missions.
researcher, yeah. And so he says that there were 4 positive results that basically they compared to, well, what would microbial respiration look like here on our soil? And they said, okay, it fits the same curve on Mars that we see here on Earth. So, but then other tests to look for organic matter came back negative. So then that's why they declared there's no life on Mars, but he still
so
thinks.
some said there was an inorganic process that could have been working to create these types of things, but this gentleman's still convinced. And one of the interesting things is they talk about Earth and Mars swapping material back and forth as meteorites strike and those types of things, and particles are carried back and forth. So if we did find life on Mars and it evolved totally independently of life on Earth, why would we expect it to have DNA and RNA and proteins that look just like the ones on Earth? And so if we do find it on Mars, it's likely that it was because there was some material transferred back and forth, and that life was carried from Earth to Mars. We have no evidence that life ever evolved there in the first place.
Yeah, you just don't know if it's native if you find it, because we've contaminated everything. Because even as much as you try to sterilize things that go into space, there are some microbes that are really good at surviving.
Just
even
can't
those,
kill them.
Yeah, you just can't get rid of all of them. So, so most likely, that's what's happened. And even if we do find, let's say somehow we do find native microbial life, I'm not sure how we're going to know if it's native or not. Maybe if it looks different or does some things differently, but that still doesn't prove evolution. See, they're doing all this because they want to say, look, Earth is 4.5 billion years old, life evolved here. The rest of the universe is 15 billion years old, so life must have evolved out there somewhere too. And that helps support the idea of evolution because there's even more time. But given more time, if all you get is a microbe, what does that say? I mean, it's not, I mean, I don't think we will. I don't personally think there's life on other planets, whether it be microbial or otherwise, just because Earth was meant to be inhabited, not other planets. And so, so it is interesting, but they're constantly trying, because they just can't find any other things, so they're constantly trying to find life on other planets.
It's an obsession.
Spending lots of money to find life on other planets. So,
all right.
We're going to end
for one
with
more
a really,
quick
on
one.
a really good note here.
Yes.
Okay.
So this comes from LifeSite News. Perfect angel. Representative Sean Duffy's family welcomes baby girl with Down syndrome. So Representative Sean Duffy earlier this year announced that he was resigning from his position in the House of Representatives because their family was welcoming their 9th child into the family, and he wanted to focus on his family, particularly because their next child, their 9th child, had a heart defect, and so the baby's going to need surgery and things. And when their baby Valentina was born, it turns out she does indeed have a heart defect, and she has Down syndrome, so she has an extra chromosome. And just reading this article and listening to her parents gushing over this, what they call perfect angel, this little baby, was just so sweet. And they said that she's the sweetest, most perfect angel we've ever seen, and the extra chromosome certainly made her extra cute.
Yeah, I love this line. It said, this week their baby girl was born, and that baby has a little something extra to love, an extra chromosome. A great perspective to look at.
It is, in a world where we see such a war on children, and especially children that are born with, genetic defects and other defects and things. It is just so refreshing to see this attitude by someone who's in politics, nonetheless.
Yep.
And it's just encouraging to me to see that there are people out there, politicians, that do, and it should be, we should, as Christians, we need to be involved in these fields because these decisions are being made, and we need Christians in these fields to uphold what is right and what is true, and to fight for life and these different issues. And so it's good to end on a good note like that.
Seeing life celebrated, something we
life.
don't get to talk about very often on Answers News. It's fantastic to see life being celebrated as it should be. All right, so that's the show for today. We hope you can join us again next week. Thank you.